Every Saturday morning for the past 6 years, I've had the same ritual. I wake up before the sun, make a pot of dark roast coffee, the kind my wife used to say was strong enough to stand a spoon in, and I sit out on the back porch of my house in Dayton, Ohio, watching the neighborhood slowly come to life. It's quiet. It's mine. It's the 1 hour of the week where nothing is complicated. I'm 67 years old. I retired 3 years ago from 31 years working quality control at a manufacturing plant. My hands still know what it feels like to check tolerances on a part that's a fraction of a millimeter off. My mind still notices when something doesn't fit right. That instinct, that quiet, patient attention to detail, is probably what saved my son. His name is Ray. He's 34, works in logistics for a distribution company out in the suburbs, and he has always been, from the day he was born, the kind of man who trusts too easily. His mother, my wife Patricia, God rest her, she passed 5 years ago from a stroke. She used to call it his greatest gift and his greatest weakness, both at the same time. He sees the best in people. He always has. Even when the evidence points another direction, Ray finds a reason to give someone another chance. So when my neighbor Hank, a retired postal worker who lives 3 houses down and has known our family for 20 years, pulled me aside one evening in early October while I was raking leaves, I didn't dismiss what he said. But I didn't repeat it either. Not yet. "I don't want to cause trouble," Hank said, leaning on the fence, his voice low. "But I saw something last week that's been bothering me. Your son's wife, she had a man at the house. Wednesday afternoon, I was walking Harvey. Harvey is his beagle. They were in the driveway. It wasn't nothing the way they were talking." He paused. "I just thought you should know." I thanked him. I raked my leaves, and I stood in my own backyard for a long time after he went inside, holding that rake like it was the only solid thing in the world. Ray had married Vanessa 2 years prior. She was 31, worked in marketing for a real estate firm downtown. She was the kind of woman who always looked polished, hair done, nails done, the right clothes for every occasion. My wife would have said she put in the effort, and she would have meant it as a compliment. I had said it too early on. Vanessa put in the effort. But there were small things. Things I noticed the way I notice a part that's off by half a millimeter. Nothing you could hold up and say, "Look here, this proves it." Just a feeling. The way she sometimes looked at Ray when he was talking, not with warmth, but with a kind of patience, like she was waiting for him to finish. The way she redirected conversations about the future. When Ray mentioned buying a house, they were renting a nice place in Kettering, she'd changed the subject so smoothly that Ray wouldn't even notice it had happened. I noticed? But I said nothing, because I had nothing, and because Ray was happy, or he seemed happy. And after losing his mother, he deserved to be happy more than almost anything I could think of. So I kept my mouth shut for 2 weeks after Hank told me what he saw. I turned it over in my mind every morning on that porch. I asked myself if I was a bitter old man looking for problems. I asked myself if grief does that, makes you protect so hard that you push people away. I tried to be fair. And then my son called me on a Tuesday night, and his voice had something in it I hadn't heard since his mother died, a hollowness, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. "Dad," he said, "I think something's wrong." He didn't know what exactly. He said Vanessa had been distant, that she'd been going out more, coming home later, and when he asked about it, she said it was work events, client dinners, the usual. But 2 weeks ago, he'd found a charge on their joint credit card, a restaurant he didn't recognize, on a night she'd told him she was at a conference in Columbus. He'd looked it up. The restaurant was 12 minutes from their house. I didn't say anything to her, Ray told me. I don't know why. I didn't want it to be true, I guess. I told him I understood. I told him to come over for dinner on Thursday. And after we hung up, I sat in the kitchen with my cold coffee and I thought about what Hank had told me, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to go in loud. I wasn't going to call Vanessa and accuse her of anything. I wasn't going to put Ray in the middle of a confrontation built on a neighbor's observation and an unexplained restaurant charge. That's not fair to anyone, and it's not how you find the truth. You find the truth the same way you find a bad part on an assembly line, slowly, systematically, without letting your emotions make you sloppy. I started small. I called Ray's house one afternoon when I knew he was at work, just to check in with Vanessa, the way I always did occasionally. Nothing unusual, just a father-in-law saying hello. She was pleasant. She asked about my garden. She mentioned she was working from home that day because she had back-to-back calls. The next Wednesday, I drove past their house around 2 in the afternoon. I told myself I was running an errand, and I was. I needed to stop at the hardware store on Route 48, but I took the long way. I slowed down. There was a silver Honda Accord parked in front of the house that I didn't recognize. It wasn't there when I circled back 40 minutes later. I wrote down the time. Both times. I'm not proud of what I was doing, but I'm not ashamed of it either. Over the next 3 weeks, I paid attention. I didn't spy in any dramatic way. No hiding in bushes, no private investigators. I just watched what was already visible, the way any person pays attention when something doesn't feel right. I noticed that Vanessa's work from home days were almost always Wednesdays. I noticed that she'd stopped mentioning Ray's name in the same warm way. It had shifted to something more transactional, like she was referring to a roommate. And I noticed when Ray and I had dinner together and he showed me their bank app to ask my opinion on refinancing options, that their joint savings account had dropped significantly since the summer. Ray didn't see it the way I saw it. He assumed it was normal expenses. They'd done some home renovations, replaced the HVAC unit, bought new furniture. I didn't push, but I made a mental note of the number I'd seen, and I compared it to what Ray had told me about their finances back in the spring. The gap was larger than furniture and an HVAC unit. I am not a confrontational man by nature. I spent 31 years on a factory floor learning to solve problems methodically, not emotionally. But I am a father, and there comes a point where patience and restraint stop being virtues and start being a disservice to the person you love. That point came on a Friday in November. Ray had called me that morning, and this time the hollowness in his voice was different. It had edges to it, like something cracking from the inside. He told me that he'd come home early from work the day before with a migraine, and when he pulled into the garage, Vanessa's car was there, but a second car was parked on the street. He'd gone inside, and she'd been in the kitchen, and everything had looked normal, and she'd said she was on a work call and had asked their colleague to drop some files. The colleague had apparently just left. "Dad," Ray said, "I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like she had an explanation for everything, but I felt like I was in a play, like we were both reading lines." I told him to come over that afternoon. Don't call ahead, just come. When he walked in, I made us sandwiches, and I sat down across from him at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd done homework as a kid, where Patricia and I had helped him fill out his first job application, and I told him everything. What Hank had seen, what I'd noticed on the Wednesdays, the car I couldn't identify, the gap in the savings account. I watched my son's face while I talked. He didn't get angry right away. That's not Ray. He went quiet instead, the way deep water goes quiet. He looked at his hands. He asked me to repeat the part about the savings account. I did. He took out his phone and opened the bank app, and I watched him scroll back through 3 months of transactions. We sat there together for a long time without speaking. "I need to know for certain," he finally said. "Before I say anything to her, I need to know I'm not wrong." I respected that. I would have said the same thing. What Ray did next, he did on his own. He asked a friend from college, a guy named Travis who works in IT, to help him check the location history on their shared family plan. They'd set it up 2 years ago when Vanessa had gotten lost on a road trip, and they'd wanted a backup option. She knew it existed. She'd agreed to it. And when Ray looked at where her phone had been, on the Wednesdays she said she was working from home, he found that on 3 separate occasions in the past 6 weeks, her phone had been at an address 11 miles away. Not a Starbucks, not a gym, a residential address that Ray didn't recognize. He looked it up. The address was registered to a man I'll call by his first name only, out of what remains of my better judgment, first name Douglas. Ray found his LinkedIn. Douglas was in real estate. Same industry as Vanessa. That was all Ray needed. He called me from his car, parked outside our old neighborhood library. I could hear him breathing. Just breathing. "I'm not going to fall apart," he said. "I just needed to call you first." "I know," I said. "I'm here." "How long have you known something was wrong?" "I suspected," I said. "I didn't know. There's a difference. I wanted to be sure before I said anything to you. I didn't want to be the reason you lost something good if I was wrong." There was a long pause. "You weren't wrong, Dad." "I know, son. I'm sorry." The conversation he and Vanessa had that evening, I wasn't there for. Ray told me about it later, piece by piece, the way you describe something that still hurts to look at directly. She denied it at first. Then she admitted to a friendship that had gotten complicated. Then she cried. Then she accused Ray of not being present enough, of being too focused on work, of making her feel invisible. Ray listened to all of it. He's a patient man, my son, but patience has a bottom, and he'd found it. What he said to her, he told me with a calm that I recognized. It's the same calm I'd used at the plant when I found a line producing defective parts and had to shut it down. No drama, no satisfaction, just clarity. "I saw the location data," he said. "I saw the bank statements. I know what this was. I'm not going to keep having a conversation where you rewrite what happened." She left that night to stay with her sister in Cincinnati. Ray changed the locks the next morning. He called a lawyer the following Monday. Now, here's the part of the story that I think about the most. The part that doesn't make the news because it doesn't have a villain getting what they deserve in some cinematic moment. The part that is just quietly, painfully human. Ray was devastated. I don't say that lightly. He had believed in his marriage the way he believed in most things, completely, without the kind of protective cynicism most of us carry around like an umbrella. Finding out he'd been deceived didn't just hurt him. It made him question his own judgment. It made him feel foolish. And there is nothing harder to watch as a parent than your child feeling foolish for having loved someone. He came over most evenings that first month. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just watched baseball, or I'd be out in the garage working on the old Chevy pickup I've been restoring since I retired, and he'd pull up a stool and hand me tools without being asked. We'd grown up doing that together when he was a teenager, him handing me tools, me explaining what I was fixing. It was the same now, except we were both older, and the thing being fixed was harder to see. I made sure he ate. I made sure he called his lawyer when he needed to. And I made sure, when the bank statements came out in the divorce proceedings, that Ray had a clear picture of what had actually been spent and where. The forensic accounting, which his lawyer recommended, revealed that over 8 months Vanessa had transferred a total of just over $14,000 from their joint account to a personal account she had never disclosed. Some of it was characterized as personal expenses. Some of it didn't have a clear paper trail at all. Ray's lawyer filed accordingly. The divorce settlement reflected it. I'm not telling you this to celebrate. There is nothing to celebrate here. My son lost 2 years and a significant amount of money, and more than anything, the particular kind of hope you carry when you first get married. That doesn't come back the same way. You rebuild it maybe into something different, something stronger because it's been tested, but it's not the same. What I will tell you is this. The morning after the divorce was finalized, Ray came over earlier than usual. before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table and he looked, for the first time in months, like himself. "I want you to know something," he said. "I'm glad you told me. I'm glad you noticed. Some dads wouldn't have said anything. Some dads would have figured it wasn't their business." "You're my business," I said. He laughed, a short, real laugh, the kind that surprises you when it comes out. "Yeah," he said, "I guess I am." We sat there in the morning, quiet, and drank our coffee. The neighborhood was just waking up outside. A few houses down, I could hear Hank's beagle carrying on about something, probably a squirrel. I thought about what it means to pay attention to the people you love, not in an overbearing way, not in a way that steals their autonomy or treats them like they can't handle the truth, but in the quiet, patient way, the way my wife always paid attention to the people she cared about, noticing small things, storing them away, knowing when the moment was right to act and when to wait. I learned that from her. 38 years of marriage will teach you things that no amount of formal education will. She had a way of knowing when something was wrong before anyone else could see it. She would have known about Vanessa, I think, long before I did. I miss her for 1,000 reasons. But on the mornings when Ray comes over and we sit on this porch together with our coffee, I feel her in the particular way the morning light comes through the tree she planted in the backyard 20 years ago. She would have liked this, the two of us, figuring things out the way we always have, slowly, together, without making more noise than necessary. Ray is doing better now. He's been going to the gym again, seeing his friends, talking about a trip out west he wants to take in the spring. He mentioned last week that a woman at his office had asked if he'd like to get coffee sometime. He said he wasn't sure yet, that he wanted to take his time. I told him that was exactly the right answer. Some things you shouldn't rush. Some things you have to sit with long enough to understand what they actually are. That's true of grief, and it's true of trust, and it's true of a pot of dark roast coffee on a quiet Saturday morning when the neighborhood hasn't woken up yet, and you have the whole porch to yourself and nothing to do but think. I'm 67 years old, and I've learned that the most important things I've ever done haven't been loud. They haven't been dramatic. They've been slow and careful, and done out of love for someone who didn't always know I was watching out for them. That's all a father is in the end. Someone who keeps watching long after it's convenient, long after the easy years are done. Someone who notices when something is a ½ millimeter off and doesn't look away. I've thought a lot about what I could have done differently, whether I should have spoken sooner or waited longer or stayed out of it entirely. There are nights I still turn that question over like a stone in my hand, checking both sides. But here's what I keep coming back to. The things that mattered in this story weren't dramatic. They weren't loud. They were quiet acts of paying attention and then having the honesty to act on what I saw, even when I didn't want it to be true. Vanessa made choices. I'm not going to sit here and say I know what was in her heart or what was missing in her life that led her to those choices. I don't know that, and it wouldn't be fair to pretend I do. What I do know is that her choices set something in motion, and the consequences that followed weren't punishment. They were just the natural end of a road she'd been walking for a long time. Actions accumulate. Patterns don't stay hidden forever. The truth has a way of becoming visible when enough people are paying close enough attention, and eventually, someone always is. Ray's integrity through all of this, that's the thing that stays with me most. When he found out what had happened, he didn't rage. He didn't make a scene. He sat across from me at that kitchen table, asked me to repeat what I'd seen, opened his phone, looked at the numbers, and made a clear-eyed decision about what kind of man he wanted to be going forward. That takes something most people don't talk about enough. It takes the willingness to face a hard truth without letting it make you someone you're not. That kind of character isn't built in a crisis. It's built in every small, honest moment that came before. Ray had been building it his whole life without knowing he'd need it. And I think about what it asked of me, too. It would have been easier, genuinely easier, to say it wasn't my business, to convince myself that whatever was happening in my son's marriage was between him and his wife and none of my concern. A lot of fathers would have made that choice and called it respect for boundaries, but I've lived long enough to know the difference between staying out of something because it's right and staying out of something because it's convenient. This wasn't a close call. My son needed someone to be watching. Not controlling, not interfering, just watching, the way people who love each other do. What got us through wasn't luck. It was the slow accumulation of things done right, the willingness to look clearly at what was in front of us, the discipline to gather facts before feelings, and then the steadiness to act when the moment came. Those aren't glamorous qualities. You don't see them celebrated much, but they are what actually hold a life together when something inside it breaks. Ray is going to be okay. I know that the way I know when a part has been repaired correctly, not because someone told me, but because I can see it myself, right in front of me. He's going to carry what happened for a long time, maybe always in some way, but he's going to carry it without being crushed by it. That's all you can ask for. That's the whole thing, really. Not that life doesn't break you, but that you know how to keep going after it does. I'm 67 years old, and that is the only lesson I've got worth passing on.